Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It's Rabbi Stephen again, Rabbi Shmuel ben Yehoshua, or Rashbi, once again in the house. Hope you had a great week. Looking forward to Shabbat services this week. Hint, hint. I'm back from my trip. I will be there. And this week, our portion is Korach. Korach. We are in the book of Numbers. And one of the things we see in Numbers, as I said last week, is there was a lot of discontent, a lot of malcontent. We had the spies go out last week, and they came back, and 10 of them gave very negative, very disheartening reports about what was going on in the land of Canaan. The land was too hard to work and make a living. There were giants. We were grasshoppers in their eyes. They're going to roll over us. It's a very tough wilderness. You had the voice of reason, of course, with Yehoshua, who is now Joshua ben Nun, and you also had Caleb ben Yefuneh, who said, "No, Hashem has been with us the whole time. He will see us through." Didn't work out. So now that all that is going on, we have this guy Korah, who was a Levite, who looked at Moses and looked at Aaron and basically said, what's so special about them? Why can't I be the high priest? Now for those of you who read the Torah, following this, you think, oh, okay, well, we had two things go on. We had the spies. The people are upset that they now have to spend 40 years in the desert, and it was really kind of ripe for a mutiny. But the other thing, okay, is that we had a little bit of Lashon Hara, okay? We had people that were saying, they were saying the truth. They really were. They reported what they saw, but it was the way they presented it. Now, what's really interesting, and I'm just going to touch on this briefly, I'm not going to get very political, but if you look at what's going on today in our political landscape, people are doing the same thing. They are taking a topic and they are putting a certain perspective on it in order to create a perception. Now, some people call this fake news. That's the lingo. Okay, that's the new word for it. But some of us who are a little bit older, who have some gray hair or don't have any hair at all, we remember this is the word propaganda. People look at reality. They want to have an effect that is not the effect, or is a different effect than what's really going on. And what do? They highlight certain things. Okay, yes, the land was a little bit tough. These people were used to being pampered. They came out of Egypt, and they were in the wilderness, and they had their food, they had their water, they had clothes, everything was taken care of. Now they're going to have to work for a living. Remember the fifth commandment? 6 days will you work, seventh day will you rest. Yeah, 6 days will you work. Remember that? Okay, you got to work. That's part of it. Be productive. Do something. Keep out of trouble. That type of thing. So, Korach was a Levite, again, and he didn't like the idea that he was not one of the Kohen Gadol. People were already upset. Now, again, let's get back to the whole idea of the flow of the Torah. Some people say, okay, well, the spies went out. Now the people have to wander around in the wilderness, hang out in the desert for 40 years, because they obviously are not fit to be able to take the new land, and now it's ripe for a rebellion. Some people disagree with that. Some people say that this happened a year before, a year after, whatever. It just wasn't the flow. See? And that's kind of what makes up our sages. How do we know? Well, so people disagree, but that's okay. Part of it is that there is a flow to the Torah that we may not be able to understand without delving into it. Why is this here? Why is that there? Why at the end, for example, of the last portion, did it talk about a guy who was out gathering firewood on the Shabbat, and there was capital punishment? Why is that in there? We'll come to that. Okay? So there's a whole flow to it. So what happens here? Moses, of course, was upset. He was a man of peace. Aaron, the Kohen Gadol, was a man of peace. But it wasn't just Korah that was causing the trouble. There was our old friends Dathan and Abiram from Egypt. These guys were taskmasters. They had a pretty cushy life, and here they are out in the wilderness. So they want to be in charge. The Torah also mentions another gentleman by the name of On, O-N. And he was first mentioned as being part of the rebellion. Then his name isn't mentioned at all. So we have the Midrash. The Midrash is kind of like the folklore that goes around along with the Torah. It kind of explains some of the holes, some of the gaps in the narrative. And what happened was that his wife goes to him and she says, dude, what are you doing? Why are you causing problems? He said, well, Moses and Aaron are in charge, and this guy Korach wants to be in charge, and let's align ourselves with them. She says, why? Why are you causing trouble? Whoever's in charge, if it's Moses and Aaron, if it's Korach, either way, you're going to be a plain old Levite. You're going to have to be carrying the stuff or ministering to the Kohanim. What difference does it make? She talks some sense into him. Basically saved his life, because what happens? They create a test. They say, okay, Korach, take your censer, your pan that holds the incense, and offer the fire to Hashem, and let's see if he accepts it. Now, this is kind of reminiscent about what happened to Nadab and Abihu, who were Aaron HaKohen Gadol's two older sons. They went into the tabernacle with strange fire. And as a result, they met their demise. They weren't supposed to do that. So now, here's the test. We're creating that. We're creating the whole idea of the incense. And with the incense, this is going to be a definitive on who gets to be in charge. And as we know, they offered their incense, and Hashem did not accept it. The ground opened up. It not only swallowed Korach, it also swallowed the 250 elders that joined in with him. Now, interestingly enough, as you remember from the priestly blessing, Hashem talks about, or not the priestly blessing, the attributes of Hashem, the 13 attributes. And one of them is saying, visits mitzvot to 1,000 generations, but for those that create evil, it's 3 or 4 generations. It visits iniquity onto them. Now, what's the reason for that? Well, there's an old saying, an apple doesn't fall far from the tree. If you have parents that are not moral, that don't have a lot of integrity, the odds that the kids are going to grow up with integrity are not real good, because where are they going to get it from? Have to get it from the parents. That's why the family is such an important unit. But we have a series of Psalms in the book of Psalms, the book of Tehillim. And the Psalm for Monday, remember, there's a Psalm for every day of the week that the Levites used to sing at the temple, not only to honor the day and count down to Shabbat, but remember what day it was. They didn't have any calendars back then. And the day for Monday, the Psalm for Monday, is from the offspring of Korach. So his offspring saw what happened, and they turned around. They said, "This is not where we want to be. We want to be part of Hashem's Torah, Hashem's laws." And they became very dedicated Levites, very dedicated psalmists. So they are honored with their beautiful writings of Psalms as having chosen the Psalm of the day for Yom Sheni, the second day of the week, which in our calendar is Monday. So once that was over, there was still Dathan and Abiram. So now what they did was they had the princes, the people come out, and they had these staffs. And just to make sure that people didn't realize that any incense that's not in the tabernacle is going to mean your demise, he invited Aaron to partake in this. So he had this staff, and they said, put your staff in there, and let's see what happens the next day. The next day, they looked at Aaron's staff, and it had blossomed. He had, almond clusters growing from his staff, and almonds don't take that long to grow. It's one of the quicker growing crops, whereas the other people didn't have a staff at all, didn't have anything grow on their staff. So that kind of showed that Aaron was the Kohen Gadol. He was chosen. But the important thing is that through all this, right, Moses was very distraught that these people, that ultimately his cousins, because he was a Levite too, Korach was a cousin, that they're rebelling, and he tried to talk him out of it. And it's interesting, we talk about spinning the truth. Okay, what did Korach say? Now, we know that one of the commandments in the V'ahavta, the last commandment, with the tzitzit, we just had this. And it's interesting that he would bring this up. This is part of the Midrash, the folklore. It's interesting he would bring this up because he's trying to show how these commandments are just Moses' invention. Hashem had nothing to do with it. He said, okay, Moshe, let me ask you a question. It says that that we're supposed to take these threads, these tzitzits, and make them and put a thread of techelet inside the tzitzi as a distinguishing mark. And Moshe's like, yeah. And he says, okay, so what if you have a cloth of wool that is all blue? Do you still have to put the techelet in there? And Moshe said, yes, you do, because it's a different thing. And he's trying to show him how absurd some of these laws are. One of the things that it discusses in the Sansino edition of the Chumash, and they go into a little bit more elaborate discussion than the Art Scroll, the Orthodox, is that Korach said, okay, so a woman has these flocks and she has to give this, and she has to give a certain amount to the Kohanim, a certain amount to the Levites, let the poor. Next thing you know, she doesn't have any cattle left. So she grows the crops, and there they are with their tithes. So it's like people can't live because these laws are so restrictive, which of course wasn't true, but he was trying to spin the truth. So unfortunately, these people were removed from the congregation, the Kohelet Yisrael, the Kalal Yisrael. But it's just kind of a shame that people do that they don't really, understand that, sometimes this is your karma, this is your dharma, okay, this is your purpose in life. That's why we say in one of our morning prayers, thank you, Hashem, for leading us, for providing what's needed, So, all right, hope to see you at services. I've made the challenge to have some people come up and show up for a Saturday morning service. People say it's too long, it's uninteresting. I say, you know what? Give me one shot. Give me one shot to show you how interesting Saturday morning services can be. We'd love to see you there. We'd love to have a minyan, open up the Torah, talk about it, and look forward to seeing you Friday night, Saturday morning. Shabbat Shalom.